right, everybody, buckle up because we're diving deep into Invest 97L. And let me tell you, this one's got my attention.
Yeah, definitely one to watch, especially this late in the game, right? The
Yeah.
late September hurricanes, you never know.
No kidding. And with the Gulf Coast in its sights, talk about a nail biter. Even if you're just thinking about a trip down there, this thing could really throw a wrench in things. We're talking potential impacts from Louisiana all the way to Florida, so.
Yeah, this is one where you definitely want to stay informed.
For sure. Well, Fox Weather is all over it, and they're saying Invest 97L, it could become a tropical storm, maybe even Hurricane Helene by midweek. But hold on a sec. Let's rewind for a second. Invest. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, why should we care?
That is the question, right? Like, it's not just some random storm. National Hurricane Center, they use Invest when they're really keeping an eye on something they think could, develop. It's like, imagine you're at a party, things are kind of quiet, and then suddenly everyone's looking over at the corner like something's happening. That's an Invest. Everyone's paying attention because it could get interesting.
Okay, so it's got everyone's attention. Got it. Now, Fox Weather also mentioned Tallahassee prepping sandbags. Tallahassee, that's not even on the coast. What gives?
See, that's what makes this storm so tricky. They show those projected paths on Fox Weather, and they look all nice and neat, but...
Right, like connect the dots.
Exactly, but those are just simplifications. In reality, a storm's path can be influenced by so many things. Water temperatures, what those upper-level winds are doing, even tiny little weather systems we barely notice.
It's like a game of atmospheric billiards up there?
Exactly, and those little nudges can mean a difference of, hundreds of miles.
Whoa, hundreds of miles. That's not reassuring.
Yeah.
So you're saying those projected paths are more like possibilities than guarantees.
Exactly. And that's why seeing Tallahassee, so far inland, getting ready for potential flooding, that's a big deal. Tells us they're not just worried about the coast, they're thinking about a wider range of impacts.
Right. Because a hurricane's impact, it's not just about where the eye makes landfall.
No way, not at all. We're talking Louisiana to Florida. A huge chunk of the Gulf Coast needs to be on alert. This isn't just about a few beaches. This is potentially a major event for millions of people.
Okay, so we've got a potentially major hurricane brewing. Path is still up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about a region that's already seen its fair share of these storms.
Absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting because...
It's like everyone's holding their breath down there, just waiting to see what this thing does.
Oh, yeah, the suspense is real.
Speaking of holding your breath, one thing I always find kind of wild about hurricane season is how it messes with your head.
Oh, totally.
Even if you're nowhere near the coast, it's like you can't help but get caught up in the what-ifs.
Oh, absolutely. The psychological impact of these things, that's a whole other deep dive right there. But yeah, the uncertainty, it gets to you.
Totally. It's like, how do you even prepare for something when you don't know if it's going to be a sprinkle or a full-blown disaster?
Well, that's where, that Brian Norcross advice you mentioned really comes in handy. Being proactive,
Yeah.
Right? Not waiting till the last minute. Don't wait till they're boarding up windows to start thinking about a plan.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. What are some concrete things people can do right now, even with all this uncertainty, to get ready?
Well, the good news is a lot of hurricane preparedness is just common sense, right? No matter where the storm goes, you start with the basics. Do you have that go bag ready? Do you know your evacuation route, just in case? Have you checked in on, any elderly relatives or neighbors who might need an extra hand? These are all things you can do today, no matter what Invest 97L decides to do.
Love it. Actionable steps. Now, you mentioned evacuation routes, and I know a lot of people, they hear hurricane and they think, get out of there. But
Right.
with a storm like this, where that path is so up in the air, how do you know when it's time to actually evacuate?
$1 million question, right? And it's tough because there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Every storm is different, every location, your own personal risk tolerance, it all comes into play. But here's the thing. Pay attention to your local officials. They're the ones who are really monitoring things on the ground. And if they issue an evacuation order, take it seriously.
Yeah.
Don't try to second-guess the experts. They've got information you don't.
So important. Looking at these Fox weather maps, it seems like so much hinges on whether Invest 97L interacts with, that dip in the jet stream we talked about earlier.
Yeah, right.
What happens if it gets caught up in that? Could it, change everything?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? And that's where those computer models, those fancy computer models, they come in. Trying to crunch all that data, atmospheric pressure, wind speeds, how warm is the ocean to figure out how the storm is going to interact with these bigger weather patterns.
Right.
But, even the best models have their limits, especially this far out.
So even the experts are kind of in wait-and-see mode, huh? They can analyze, they can make predictions, but
It's Mother Nature's show in the end, right?
always.
Yep.
And maybe a little healthy respect for that is a good thing.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so we've talked about how uncertain this path is, the importance of being prepared. Those computer models, everybody loves a good computer model.
Right.
But there's another layer to this story, isn't there? One that goes beyond just this one storm. It seems like every time you turn on the news, bam, another hurricane.
Right.
Is it just me, or are these storms getting, like, more frequent,
Yeah.
more intense?
No, you're definitely onto something.
Yeah.
And that's really the big takeaway here, right? This isn't just about one storm. It's about the bigger picture, the changing climate. Like what we're seeing with Invest 97L, the possibility of it getting strong really fast, the fact that it could go in so many different directions.
Right.
These are all things scientists have been saying could become more common as the planet warms up.
So this one storm, as unpredictable as it is right now,
Mhm.
it's like a sneak peek into this bigger global trend.
Exactly. Think about it. Warmer ocean, more fuel for hurricanes, and then you've got those atmospheric circulation patterns changing, messing with their tracks, how strong they get. It's all connected. And listen, we can't say for sure that climate change caused this specific storm,
Right.
but it's definitely a factor in how hurricane season plays out overall.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. The science behind this thing, how important it is to be prepared, and that link to climate change. But if you had to pick one big takeaway for our listeners, what would it be?
Honestly, I go back to that idea of being prepared. Even with all the unknowns, there's a lot you can do to get ready. Have a plan, stay informed, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Love it. Knowledge is power,
Yeah,
especially when you're dealing with Mother Nature.
exactly.
Now, I got to ask, because I know it kind of caught my eye too.
Yeah.
That detail in the Fox Weather Report about Tallahassee getting those sandbags ready,
Yeah.
did that surprise you?
I'm not going to lie, it definitely made me do a double take. Tallahassee, that's pretty far inland. Seeing them take those precautions, it really drives home just how widespread the flooding could be with this storm.
Right.
It's a good reminder that even if you're not right on the coast, you're not necessarily out of harm's way. We got to be thinking about those wider impacts, not just the wind and the surge.
So important. Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into Invest 97L, the hurricane that's keeping everyone guessing, and what it means for the future of hurricane season. Remember, stay informed, stay prepared, and keep an eye on those reliable sources. You know, the National Hurricane Center, Fox Weather, all the good stuff. And here's a little something to think about as you go about your week. If one storm can cause this much uncertainty, this much preparation, what does that tell us about how we need to be thinking about our communities or infrastructure in a world where the climate is changing? Something to ponder. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.